So, Elliot, you had the news brought to you about the Reds trade over the weekend. Jonathan India, a Red no more. Now, Jacob, you've been on the Reds need to move on from Jonathan India for a while. Now, this wasn't a hot take. A lot of people had that take. I was kind of in the middle. I'm not surprised they moved on from Jonathan India, but what did catch me by surprise was when Terry Francona got hired, there's multiple interviews he's done where he said he couldn't wait to get to work with Jonathan India. And I remember leaning your way saying, hey, he's definitely going to get moved. It just doesn't make sense with you look at the roster and just the trajectory of a lot of the up and coming prospects. It just doesn't make sense on where you would use him, where you would place him, how you would pay him, how much you'd pay him, yada, yada. But then I started like, well, maybe they're not going to move on from him because when you hear Terry Francona on multiple media hits say he can't wait to get to work with Jonathan India, and talent on this, it made me feel a different way about that, especially when you had Jonathan India speak out about, hey, needing to go out and get a manager that's going to hold this team accountable. That stands out to me. But ultimately, Red for the year, had a very good run with the Cincinnati Reds. He's now a Royal. Your guys' takeaway, Jonathan India, a Red no longer.
Yeah, I was at Carlo and Johnny. On
Did you meet him?
Friday. I did not.
Not Carlo or Johnny?
Neither of them.
That's a shame.
Neither of them were there. But I was at Carlo and Johnny. My phone was off completely, and I got a bunch of texts. I'm not checking these texts. Well, I got one from Jacob, and I was like, all right, I'll just check Jacob's real quick.
I'm honored.
It was just random. Because I didn't know if it was a work thing, so I clicked on Jacob's name. He's like, did you hear it? I'm like, what? He's like, oh, you don't know. I'm like, no, I don't.
Just kept dragging him on.
I don't know. And he said, yeah, Jonathan India is no longer a Cincinnati Red. He's been traded. So I'm not shocked it happened. I am pleasantly surprised that it did because you kind of just ran through it there, Kidder. It's if you have no place for him and the Reds, if healthy, do not have a place for Jonathan India, then you trade him and you get value. They got value. I'd argue they got more value than what Jonathan India was probably worth.
Yeah, I was shocked.
You get a starting pitcher in today's market. You get a little bit of control of this starting pitcher. He's going to help your starting rotation. I love it. I think it's a phenomenal trade. I thought the talks were over after the Reds brought on Nick Martinez again. I'm pleasantly surprised this went through. Jonathan India, I think, got a bad rap in this city for a long time. I don't know why that is. He played when he was hurt. He played hard. I did think he was a leader of the team. Didn't go his way. Didn't win a lot of games, but it's what it is. Jonathan India, I'm going to miss you. And the Royals get their leadoff guy, which I think is funny because I think many people in this town denounced the fact that Jonathan India could be a leadoff hitter. Well, the Royals said, I don't care about his defense. I just want a leadoff hitter. And that's what they got. So good for Jonathan India. I do think it's funny that both these two guys were teammates at Florida. So they got traded for each other just to swap, an even swap. And I like it. I like it for both teams, if we're going to be honest. Jonathan India gets a fresh start in KC, and we get a starting pitcher in a rotation that desperately needs depth. So I'm very, very pleasantly surprised that this happened. This is a move that championship caliber teams make.
No question about that.
When you need to get rid of a guy that probably won't play, you get him for a starting pitcher, ready now talent. So now you have money to spend elsewhere. The Reds won this trade. If you had to just ask somebody off the cuff, maybe they would say the Royals did. I don't think so. I think the Reds got the better player here. And I'm very, very excited to see what they do next.
In a perfect world, that guy's not in your lineup. So trade for someone that is. I think in the offseason, you have to operate as if everyone on your team is going to play 140 of the 162 games. Otherwise, obviously depth is important. Having backups are important. You need some bench backs. That's why you re-signed Santiago Espinal. I'm not signing a guy that can return me a Brady Singer to be a bench bat. I think Brady Singer is going to help this team a lot more than Jonathan India will, assuming, again, that those guys are healthy. And that's how I would like to operate in the offseason. That's how I've been asking for a long time. I think the best debate for keeping Jonathan India, or the best argument for keeping Jonathan India in Cincinnati is, well, what if Matt McClain gets hurt? Well, if that's the best thing going for you, then I think you should be traded. That's just how I view professional sports as a whole, especially when you're playing with one arm tied behind your back, depending on how much payroll you're willing to give. I think getting Brady Singer in a trade takes a lot of pressure off the Reds' shoulders of getting more starters in the free agency. And then now they're going to be able to focus on the bats. I certainly think more bats are coming. I think outfield's coming. I think an infielder's coming. I think the Brady Singer trade is phenomenal. I thought it was over once Martinez signed, but I think getting both of them is absolutely a great move for the Cincinnati Reds.
The India thing too ran pretty stale at the end, and I think he was frustrated, very very openly frustrated with the organization, with the front office. At the end of the season, you heard it when David Bell got fired, and I think that his fate was sealed right around there, right when he started talking to the media, saying that the clubhouse wasn't led well enough or whatever he said. I don't want to misquote him. But his fate was sealed, and the Reds did the right thing. They traded him for a guy that's going to help the team next season immediately. I love it very much. I'm very sad that Ian Jabot is no longer with the team. That makes me think that another reliever is going to get signed at some point too, because that was a guy I thought was good enough to make the roster. And I'm pretty shocked that he is not returning, given the fact that Buck Farmer is also not returning. Justin Wilson's not returning. So there's some names that have to be replaced here. There's some positions that need to be fixed. But it was if you're a fan of my Twitter account, and if you've been a supporter of the Eat Train 513 Twitter account, this was a tough weekend. Jonathan India, I'm the captain of that fan club, and then the Ian Jabot London Bridge has fallen bandwagon. Both of them are out of Cincinnati. Tough weekend.
Full rebrand?
Has to be a rebrand. I have to pick two new guys. I don't know who my two guys will be.
Is the bit going to stay the same, where your favorite players are just not good at baseball?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Probably be it.
In
other news, Santiago Espinal is coming back. Santiago Espinal is returning to the Cincinnati Reds on a 1-year deal. Good for him. He deserved it. He gives us the depth. I wouldn't say he's a great baseball player, but he's good enough to fill the gaps when you need him. So he will be the new Jonathan India, I guess.
Yeah, probably. Better defender.
Singer 33 starts for Singer last year. That would have been the most starts of any Red last year. Obviously, I think Hunter Green was about 26 starts. I mean, bringing in a veteran pitcher who has shown that he could pitch deep into a season and not regress as the season goes on. I think that's key. That's big. We've talked about, of course, some of the younger guys having to improve from year to year, but bringing in veterans who you know what you get with them, assuming that they're healthy. Again, you mentioned a little bit ago, you thought with the Martinez, when they got that deal done, that, okay, that would probably put to rest this opportunity here. But you get Singer and Martinez, and you have Nick Lodolo, you have Hunter Green, you have Andrew Abbott, and maybe Andrew Abbott could be on the move too. Jacob, you've been talking about that's a good trade piece as well. But Rhett Lauder was great in September, obviously going to be fighting for a spot in this rotation next season, no doubt. But what is that rotation now? I mean, is it as simple as just the names we threw out there? Is that the rotation for the Reds in 25?
I keep seeing people say Martinez is a starter.
He will be.
He will be a starter the whole way?
I think to start the season he will be.
Maybe to start.
Because I don't think Lauder's starting up.
You don't think Lauder will start up?
No.
Wow. I think Lauder does start up, and I guess that's where I'm not seeing Martinez being a bona fide starter.
If Lauder's up, then I wouldn't. But I think with a qualifying offer, I think he's going to start as the starter, and then Lauder will start in AAA. He'll be up soon. I just don't think they're going to start the year with him on.
I don't think they're going to let a $21 million guy not start at least a large portion of the season. But I don't like just coming into the season with Nick Martinez being a starter in the rotation. Kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit. I know he has that ability, and God knows he did it last year. But I do think that's a little bit, good pitcher is a good pitcher no matter where you are. But Nick Martinez in the starting rotation, that's not how I would have it. I would have it Hunter Green 1, Nick Lodolo 2. I would have Rhett Lauder probably 3, Brady Singer 4, and Andrew Abbott 5 is how I would at least see it off the rip. Now, it could change. It could vary. I don't know what they'll do, but that's at least how I see it as of this very second. Nick Martinez still gives you the long relief out of the pen, and then once one of those guys goes down, easy swap, you put him into the rotation.
Yeah, and I think that's the most likely option there is that he's not a starter, but he will be whenever you need one. And that's going to be not just if one guy goes down, he's fully in the rotation. I'm saying if a guy needs to miss a start here or there, Martinez is your spot start guy, which is a hell of a spot start guy to have in your bullpen. That's a great thing for the Reds. The only reason I don't think Rhett Lauder is going to start up is because I don't think you need to. And I don't think he would have pitched last year had they not needed to. So I think they might go back to the what's the word I'm looking for? The path or the course through the minors that they had envisioned before the injuries at the end of last season, which probably did not involve him on this year's opening day rotation. So my guess would be Green, Lodolo, Abbott, Singer, Martinez.
Yeah.
And then you have Louder in AAA, and he comes up relatively quickly if he continues to kill it in AAA. I mean, I'm talking 3, 4, 5 starts, and he comes up and he kills it in the majors, and you move Martinez to the bullpen. I think that's a great way to operate.
What about Burnsy?
Would love to see him this year. I think the quickest we would see him is about when we saw Louder.
Any chance he goes to the bullpen?
Yeah.
I was gonna say I want one of them to go to the bullpen. Where does Graham Ashcraft? Does he just become a full bullpen guy this year, or is he just not gonna play?
I don't think Graham Ashcraft's gonna be wearing red.
That's what I thought, but he hasn't been traded. I want him to be traded, but I don't know. I don't know what he's worth.
I don't know how he could play after last year.
That's what I'm saying. That's how I feel too. I don't know where you move him. Same thing with Connor Phillips. How does Connor Phillips ever fit into this?
Connor Phillips almost has to be traded.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know what the plan is. I imagine there's going to be more trades going forward, but some of these guys just don't have a spot anymore.
Thoughts on, and again, there's plenty of time to dive into the pressure for certain players heading into 25. I know it's late November at this point, but this does put a lot of pressure on. It gives the Reds options moving forward because I do think it's a big year for Nick Lodolo. Because we know what he's capable of when he's healthy. We've seen him have spurts of greatness. Like there was a point last year where everyone was like, we know Hunter Green's the ace, but at times you watch Nick Lodolo who looked more dominant. There was a stretch early on last season where I'm like, I know everyone's high on Hunter Green, but like I'm watching Nick Lodolo and I'm like, I think this guy, Hunter Green's the more exciting pitcher. I thought Lodolo looked like he had the better stuff. Obviously Hunter Green, fantastic season. Finished his top 10, number 8 in Cy Young voting. We know how great of a season he ended up having. But the same thing with Nick Lodolo last year, the same year before and the year before that. The guy can't stay healthy. I think it's a big question mark season for Nick Lodolo because we know where he stands in this rotation, but he has to keep that spot in that rotation because if we have another injury-filled season of Nick Lodolo, what's the outlook on him moving forward, big picture? Because we know how talented he is when he's healthy. He just can't stay healthy. Your thoughts on Nick Lodolo?
I trust him. I believe in him. But if you're not going to be healthy, then you're worthless. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it's just a fact of the matter. Nick Senzel was never healthy one bit. And unfortunately, when you can't stay on the field, there's no way to judge how good of a pitcher you are. We can sit here and say that when you're healthy, yada, yada, yada. But if you're not healthy, you're nothing. And that's unfortunately the direction that I believe Nick Lodolo could go. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's, his career's over by any means. I just need to see him be healthy. I need to see him have a complete season one time. That's what I can't say anything about him until it happens. He's not a bad pitcher. He's a solid pitcher, but you have to be contributing on a weekend basis. If you don't, and if you fall off the tank, seemingly like him and Andrew Abbott do every year, it's hard to evaluate talent.
Yeah, I've been a Hunter Green's the ace guy for a while now, and I think it's just because of the question marks around Nick Lodolo. I mean, he's great whenever he's in there pitching, but he's not in there pitching a whole lot. And it's really, really frustrating at this point in his career because we should be having debates about who our ace is.
Yeah.
We should be having these questions about who's the better pitcher in Cincinnati because when they're both out there, it certainly is close, but I can't rely on Nick Lodolo to have 20-plus starts in the season. It's just not something that I'm going to bring myself to expect because we haven't seen it yet. So hopefully I'm wrong, and hopefully this year rolls around and he's able to stay healthy and protect his arm and his shin and whatever else he can find a way to bang up, and he can start for most of the year because it would be great. And he is a massive, massive key to this Reds team's success. Having this pitching lineup or rotation healthy this season is a huge key to what this team's going to be able to do. It should be a strength of this team, at least on paper. And they should thrive as long as they're all healthy. And that's going to come down to Nick Lodolo as the headliner of that question because we know Andrew Abbott has the concerns as well as you get later in the season. Singer really hasn't in his career, but with all pitchers, injuries are always a concern. And it's going to be the eyes focused on Lodolo, on whether or not he's going to be able to stay healthy all year long. But it's really everyone because though you do have Nick Martinez, and we've talked about how he's been able to come from the bullpen to the starting rotation, and that'll be a great thing for the Bengals, or not the Bengals, for the Reds to have as wiggle room here. But I think you get one or two injuries, you're in a bad spot. I mean, we saw what happened at the end of last year when you didn't have starters. You can't play baseball games. It's embarrassing to watch. Just keep running these guys out there and asking them to do stuff that they're not supposed to be able to do.
That's the craziest part too. The Reds, I think, had I want to say a winning record down the stretch with no starting pitchers available. David Bell, though, got fired.